let's go beat David Jolly in November. You see, because individual opinions and passionate supporters are the beauty of our conservative movement. But tonight, the primary is over. Tonight, we put aside our differences. Tonight, we are one united Republican Party.
Donald's winning nearly 48% of the vote, more than 22 points ahead of Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins. Now, if elected in November, Donalds would become Florida's first black governor. His Democratic opponent, David Jolly, leaving the Republican Party in 2018 and officially became a Democrat last year. In South Florida, a redrawn congressional map reshaping a Democratic primary and renewing a debate over black representation. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the only white candidate in a plurality black district, winning the nomination over former Congresswoman Sheila Shirtless McCormick and 3 other black candidates. The governor's race now pitting a Trump-backed Republican against a former Republican running as a Democrat. Now, the last Democrat Florida voters elected governor was Lawton Chiles, who won re-election in 1994. And joining me now with more, Republican strategist and political columnist Angie Wong. Angie, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to have you. Now, Byron Donalds was heavily favored to win on the Republican side and got twice as many votes as the next candidate. Do you expect Republicans to have any trouble rallying for Donalds to face David Jolly in November?
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for having me. I think that it was relatively a boring primary for Byron Donalds. Since the very inception of his campaign, when he announced, he immediately got the Trump endorsement on day one. So from that point forward, anyone jumping in knew that they had a very big hill to climb, and no one even came close. Not the Lieutenant Governor, Jay Collins, not James Fishback, who had a lot of support from younger voters. Byron Donalds was always up in the double digits, and towards the end, he won the entire thing completely. No surprises there. But now the real race begins for him. And luckily, Byron Donalds has collected over $100 million in his piggy bank to run against David Jolly. And I don't even know how much of that he'll need to use. So David Jolly is well known to Floridians here. He has run multiple times as a Republican. He's now switched over to being a Democrat, mainly because I think that was the only way he can get in the race, not because that is truly who he is. He is certainly not a Democrat, but he's going to now be on the Democratic line. So I think Byron Donalds, we haven't seen much. It's only in the last legs of his primary run that we started hearing about policies. We started hearing about, him wanting to reform insurance and work more with the AI community and the space communities. So now we're going to be able to see what he's actually about rather than just being a Trump-endorsed candidate.
And if Donalds takes office, how do you expect him to diverge from Ron DeSantis?
Well, it's a very big legacy to fill, and luckily the two men get along very well, and it seems like it's going to be a nice kind of transition if Byron Donalds win, and we do expect him to win. I was looking at the numbers of the districts that Byron Donalds had won in. He's won, obviously, in Lee County, where he's from, and also here in Miami-Dade, but really just South Florida voted for him. Byron Donalds has a bit of a problem up north, especially in the Pensacola area, the Panhandle area. He didn't do very well. He barely made 20 points up there. So I think that's why we're hearing this talk of affordability and things that's going to be a lot more broader. He needs to pull in a lot more of the moderates, maybe even some Democrats. But, being a Trump Republican, you're going to start seeing him move away from that. And I wonder about that a lot because he relied so much on being a Trump supporter, a Trump loyalist, to the point where it may actually hurt him in the general. So I think you're going to start seeing a different Byron Donalds now. You're going to see someone who's maybe less Trump, more kind of domestic issues, certainly more about savings for all Floridians. I think that Byron Donalds knows exactly what he's doing. He's definitely paired up with everyone. Everyone on his team is absolutely spectacular. So I do expect to see a really well-run race here. And David Jolly, again, he's a veteran in these sports. So I do expect to see something from him. This is going to be a real match now.
And Angie, this was Florida's first election since the districts were redrawn, and a couple of Democrat incumbents, Representatives Wasserman Schultz and Moskowitz, held out against the socialist candidates in newly drawn districts. Do you think the redistricting had anything to do with it, or are Florida Democrats just not buying socialism?
It's really strange. I've been watching one of the newer districts, Florida 25, and it stretches from Palm Beach to Broward through and down to Miami. And what's really interesting about this district is it's a heavily Jewish district. Lots of Cubans, lots of South and Central Americans live there. So why would Bernie Sanders handpick a Democrat socialist candidate, Oliver Larkin, to run in that district? It made no sense to me. But then I realized, they're really just testing the waters here. Some of these newer districts, they're favorable to Republicans, except for maybe Florida 25. And that cuts through some of the districts where I am, mainly because it's probably the bluest district. And I see now what's happening. You have Ron Emanuel, who has moved here. He's of the Clinton campaign fame. He's moved into that district. Bernie Sanders handpicked his candidate, Larkin, who did not win last night. And you even had Rashida Tlaib throw a huge 300-person invite-only DSA rally on Friday. And so I think they really need to win this, not so much even for 2026, but really for 2028. That corridor is so important to them. If they have any play for Florida and the White House in 2028, they're really trying to secure the seat. You're going to see millions, maybe even more than millions, pouring into this one district because it's a must-have for Democrats.
And on the other hand, are there some seats you expect to see Republicans flip due to the redistricting?
I think some of the seats are already there. I'm hopeful for Florida 20, where Debbie Wasserman Schultz is running, although we've never really been able to make that much gain in that particular seat. Maybe with better messaging, we could. I'm really surprised that she chose to run in that district. It's a heavily, heavily black district, lots of Latinos. It's a new district for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Remember, she was down in Fort Lauderdale, which is completely redrawn, and she's kind of been squeezed out of it. So it would be really interesting to see how well she does there. But I'm happy to see that she did advance through the primaries, and I think that she is, whether you like her politics or not, she is, very much a kind of cornerstone here in South Florida. So I'm glad to see that there's a second life for her in a different district.
On the topic of socialism and especially DSA candidates, how well do you think Florida voters understand the costs of socialism?
Well, you have entire communities here who fled Cuba, who fled Venezuela, who's left Colombia and other places not to have exactly the same thing happen to their new country. So they know firsthand what it really means to live in a socialist society, and and furthermore in a communist society where they've lost in their entire savings, they've lost their house. They literally went on rafts to come to seek refuge in South Florida. So to have this brewing again, and not so much with the kind of the elder voters that really remember what this is about, it's really with the young college kids. And that's where we see DSA going across the country. They go into these college campuses, they sign up new young voters, and they romance them with free education, free buses, free housing, free meals, free everything.
That's
Wrapped
like
up in
in
socialism. So it sounds
during the
really
Biden
good,
administration.
but they don't really understand the realities of what that means. And I hope that being in South Florida, someone's teaching them, well, it's not so great on the other end. But on the other hand, it does push all of us, whether you're Republican, a centrist, or to the left, to really think through why this is working, especially with younger voters. I mean, there is a real issue here that we're not addressing, and DSA is able to kind of capture that. There's an issue with young people not being able to get into the housing market, for example. Insurance here is so high. A lot of young voters, when they graduate from college, they graduate with a lot of debt. You're starting your adult life already in the red. So I think all of these things compounded, and young voters are like, well, I don't want any of these things, and I don't want to vote the way my parents voted. We want some new blood. So I can see why there's so much romanticism behind this movement, but the realities are socialism doesn't work. Communism definitely doesn't work, but they don't have the reference to that. And I thought in Florida they would, but maybe we need to reteach that.
Well, definitely a lot to
And
watch
they
for
aren't
as
teaching
November
it.
fast approaches. Angie Wong, though, thank you so much, as always, for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany.
And coming up, we thrive on good vibes here on Tiffany Meyer Tonight. And after the break, we'll have some of the very best of our good vibe stories in this special edition of our show. That's after the break. Legs, but with a spirit refusing to be defined by limits. The Australian-American evangelist, author, and motivational speaker says his childhood marked by bullying, isolation, and depression. But that just a prologue to an amazing journey of love, faith, and strength that has inspired millions. Now, Nick's life story heading to the big screen in the documentary No Limbs, No Limits, the Nick B story. And joining me now is the man himself, Nick Vujicic. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have you. Now, you have an incredible life story, and you have touched so many lives by sharing it through your books and speeches, and now you're telling that story on the big screen for the first time. What has enabled you to persist through the difficulties you've faced and turn your story into something that continues to inspire so many people?
You know, my parents always said, be thankful for what you have. You know, God didn't give you arms and legs, but He gave you a brain. And just take one step at a time and do with what you have to the best of your ability. And, you know, when you're going to school, you're getting bullied and you're trying to fit in. That's hard. And so the mental health war, if you will, at a young age, trying to fit in and asking God, where are you? That was definitely a challenge I had to overcome. But with persistence, resilience, and a loving family that helped me to get through it, I want people to know that people see my disability on the outside, but we all have a disability on the inside. And this film is all about conquering our broken hearts, a need to renew our mind, and to dream big and never give up.
And let's talk about the film No Limbs, No Limits, the Nick B story, coming to theaters September 25th. Now, the trailer came out just this week. Let's actually play a part of it now for our audience.
Nick had the choice to be really angry, but he transformed. What if your life is a musical? My crazy janitor tried to tell me that I had a story.
I knew that he would be a speaker. I knew.
He decided he's going to go into the world and tell his story.
I went through a time of doubt that I...
And that's exactly what he did.
I remember sitting in the backyard with him one night, just thinking, you made it.
It was getting harder for Nick to speak when he was losing his dad.
When you go out to the world, they're going to lie to you that you need to be somebody before you're accepted.
I used to think I'm never going to be able to hold my wife's hand. I'm never going to be able to wrap my arms and hold my children when they're crying.
Well, the world's about to see Nick. And it'll never be the same again.
Both inspiring and moving, and just from the trailer. Now, I noticed the song choice in the trailer is for King and Country's Miracle. I understand you actually chose that song yourself. Why did that feel like the right anthem for the film's message?
You know, when I heard about that incredible song coming from dear friends, Aussie friends, you know, for a long time, the whole point of, you know, sometimes our requests to the Lord, God, give me a miracle. Well, sometimes when you don't get a miracle, you can be a miracle still for someone else. And to understand that we all have a story, your history is His story. And so to understand that I'm so privileged and honored that my story can be on a big screen. It's not about which story is what. It's about understanding what God can do with your broken pieces and your yes. And there's no limits as to what God can do with you. And so if I can just help one person understand that there is hope for them, that's an incredible miracle on this side of heaven.
And I understand that the documentary draws heavily on personal home videos and family footage, much of which has never been seen publicly before. What was it like revisiting those vulnerable moments and deciding to share them with the world?
You know, I'm so glad for my mum, my brother, and my sister. And, you know, my Uncle Sam, who's also featured in the documentary, he was the one that actually got the first video camera in the whole family. And my mum asked, hey, can I record some of Nick here and there? Now, when I've seen some of this, you know, these clips here and there, some of these things I've never seen before. And to be able to relive it, it was quite emotional, quite surreal. And it really is a raw, transparent, behind the curtain look of not just my life story, but understanding that we were all very strong Christians as a family. My dad was a pastor, and there are still times where even the strongest Christians go through different questions, fears, wondering where is God when we ask God for something and it doesn't happen. And so we believe this story of No Limbs, No Limits is an incredible story to relate to everyone, no matter what circumstance you're going through, to pull back a raw and transparent, really insight to understanding that even though you're a Christian, you still go through depression. You still go through fear. You still have questions and uncertainties that every human being has, but how God can turn that into good, it's miraculous.
And in looking back at your own journey while making this film, did you discover anything new or realize something about yourself that maybe surprised you?
You know what? I've been looking at all these, you know, clips, and all I can say is I'm so humbled. Look, I'm so blessed to have seen the greatest dreams of mine come true. I got married to Kanae. We got 4 beautiful kids, and traveling the world, 89 countries through, you know, Nick V Ministries and preaching the gospel to let everyone know that God loves you, He's with you, He'll pull you through. I think the whole, I guess, understanding. I'm in my, you know, mid-40s. Normally, people when they get a documentary about a life story of theirs, if you will, or journey, you're either old or dead. And I hope I'm only halfway through, right? And so we want to emanate an ignition of an inspiration that if He can use a man without arms and legs to be His hands and feet, then God can use any willing heart. And that's the whole point. That I think in this next generation and the now generation, with depression, anxiety, addiction, I think we're looking for purpose like never before. And even purposeness in our pain. To believe that God's grace is sufficient, there is hope, and if I can just help one other person get through, then it's all worth it.
And very quickly on that note, for people walking into the theater on September 25th, what are you most excited for them to experience and message you hope they walk away with?
You know, this is such a great interview. I want people to invite their friends, their work colleagues, their neighbors that may never go to a 4-walled church building and come to a theater and be changed forever. It's not about Nick's inspiration, intellect, or successes. It's all about understanding that we all go through our ups and downs, and that victory is possible. It doesn't mean that the successes along the way always look like what we think it would be, but to know that hope is real is everything.
Well, Nick Voitius, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. And a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life, or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save